jury didn't think that that was the case. In this particular one, for involuntary manslaughter, there's two things. They have to find whether it was reasonably foreseeable that this could have been prevented, and whether or not the Crumbleys had kept the gun secure enough that their son couldn't get to it. They didn't have to the whole jury didn't have to agree on both of those charges, but they had to agree at least one of those was possible. And so apparently at least some of them fought the argument that it was the husband's fault rather than hers in terms of securing the gun.
This is, of course, a precedent setting. People are going to be looking at it as to what it means, across the country, future shootings. But it's so profoundly personal to this family, but to the families of the children killed, to the whole area there. It's early, but what's been the reaction?
Well, initially the son, Ethan Crumbley, that did the shooting, was charged not only with murder but with terrorism. Prosecutors said that was because this whole incident had terrorized not only the children that were not touched within the school, but the community at large, just an entire community, and in fact suffering PTSD. When this verdict was read, several of the families of the victims were in the courtroom. They reached across afterwards, were shaking hands with the prosecutor. One of them was hugging them. They have said that they wanted to follow this to the last possible degree of what could happen. And by many accounts, they seem to feel that involuntary manslaughter charges being found guilty against the mother and potentially the father is a just verdict.
Yeah. And they watched as Jennifer Crumbley was walked away in handcuffs. And as you said, the trial will be coming up. Quinn Kleinfenter, host and senior news editor at WDET in Detroit, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It can feel like there's a flood of news competing for attention in this important election year. We've been talking with leaders from digital publications that focus on historically excluded groups about what stories they're choosing to prioritize and how their approach to news differs from more mainstream outlets. Today, I want to welcome Michelle Diamond to join the conversation. She's co-founder of Disability Scoop. It's an organization that covers the developmental disability community. It's a publication I read all the time. Michelle, welcome to Here and Now.
Thank you for having me.
So you yourself have a personal connection to this community that you also serve through your journalism. Let's start there. Tell us a little about yourself and tell us who makes up the developmental disability community.
So developmental disabilities is a really wide range. It's generally speaking conditions like autism, intellectual disability, Down syndrome, and cerebral palsy. It's a really large group of people. The CDC estimates about 1 in 6 kids have developmental disabilities, and there are estimated to be over 7.3 million Americans with them. I myself have a brother with autism, so I've lived this experience my whole life and had a real a hunger for information, and was lucky to be part of founding this very exciting publication.
And in full disclosure, I too have a child with a developmental disability, with intellectual disability, and it's been such an incredible learning experience having Disability Scoop, because I don't really find what I need in much of the press, and I turn to Disability Scoop. So my question for you, Michelle, is what do you think the news needs of people with developmental disabilities are, and do you find that the mainstream media, meets those?